Good morning. My name is George Wasielewski, Business Development Manager for HM Cragg, and on the line with me is Cody Schultz, who works as Project Manager, Applications Engineer. He wears many hats with regard to our integrated power systems and services capability at HM Cragg, and we're very happy to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about our capabilities. So as we begin here, just a couple of housekeeping. Welcome. We hope you and your families and certainly all of your teams are doing well this very strange times, and we really appreciate you making the time to actually participate and attend for this overview of integrated power. I apologize in advance if there's any background noise. I am working from home, as many of HM Craig's associates are. So if I got dogs barking or my younger son, who's in high school, happens to stop in without knocking on the door, I apologize for that in advance. Everyone should be in silent mode except for Cody and me right now, but I will open up the microphones at the end of the presentation. So if you have a question as we go through some of the slides, please type it in the toolbar, and either Cody or I will be able to see it, and we'll answer questions as we move along. And as I said, I'll open up the mics at the end if you have any additional questions. Sound for the videos. I have a couple of videos that I do want to show you. Doesn't seem to be working through the webinar tool. So I've asked Cody to actually act out the monologue. He actually wrote the script so he can kind of read through the monologue that would have been playing if you'd heard the video. If you prefer, you can go straight to the YouTube link. These are all posted up on YouTube, either during the presentation or after the fact. We'll make the presentation available to everybody, so you'll be able to get those links. If you have questions on it, again, we're more than happy to answer. And in case I forget to say it at the end, thank you very much for your continued partnership and for attending the webinar. We look forward to seeing you, Cody and I, both of you, in your town at some point this summer, hopefully when this situation improves, and we hope that you stay well. So let's kick it off with a video. I'm gonna turn my volume down here, and then Cody, let me know what you see. Should be playing now.
Yep, we're playing. So good morning, everyone. I'm gonna try to do my best to narrate this video. It won't be as good as the original, but we'll do our best here. So this is our 9355 30 kilovolt 30 kVA UPS NEMA 4 enclosure system.
Well, it seems so frozen up.
There we go.
Cody, are you still there?
Yes. So we are utilizing an Eaton 9355 30 kVA with a 3-breaker sidewall bypass. These are housed in 2 separate enclosures. The main UPS enclosure housing the UPS on a custom subfloor assembly, as well as the wall mount bypass in the separate enclosure. So some of the challenges we saw in this was the UPS being a large UPS and fitting it inside of an outdoor enclosure. The wall mount bypass, utilizing that within the system and keeping everything into a watertight containment. Also the cooling provisions we needed to provide, as this was going into a hot, humid environment out on a tarmac. So we partnered with CPI for the armor enclosure designs, as well as Fannenberg on the cooling. We've got 2 discrete enclosure designs here, one for the main UPS, one for the bypass enclosure. They can be separated on site, so this is a pick and place type scenario. If the UPS were to fail, we could put the system in bypass, lift up the main UPS enclosure and replace it with a new UPS system. There is a custom subfloor, so it can be serviced on site as well. We did accommodate for Eaton Services to do maintenance on this, so you're seeing the side removable panels to get to the capacitors, the fuses, everything on the right side of that UPS. We've got a 13,000 BTU air conditioner with 500 watts of integrated heating built into it, fully insulated enclosure, cable pass-throughs for the main input and output of the UPS back and forth from the maintenance bypass. And we've also got device distribution both on the utility side and on the protected load side. That illustrates our main cable input and output for the system. We do have active cooling and air management throughout the UPS. The cool air is pushed out of the air conditioner in the bottom middle position. It circulates through the UPS ventilation and returns at the top of the enclosure into the air conditioner in our closed loop system. So we've made all of the wiring accommodations for this solution, and all the end user will have to do on site is hook up the main input and main output. So this is all of our device distribution. This includes the air conditioner, the hydrogen sensor, and also the hydrogen ventilation kit. So our hydrogen sensor system kicks on the vent kit at 1% hydrogen levels, and it will also output a warning alarm at 2% volume of hydrogen in the cabinet. That is a Modbus capable signal that pushes out to the user to get out there and take a look at the situation. We ship all of our integrated systems on shock pallets to minimize any shipping damage, freight damage on the way to the end user site. And I think that's generally the basic overview of that system.
So we'll come back to that. We have a few other images that we can share with you on that specific project as well. That video seemed to be moving pretty quickly, so maybe it's not the best idea to try to run this way. So our agenda, I guess the ultimate goal here is to be able to describe what IPSS is, Integrated Power Systems and Services, why you choose to partner with HM Cragg, why you might want to consider offering integration services to your customers. I want to spend some time talking about enclosures. These would be the UL type rated enclosures. And then talk a little bit about the history of integration as well as what it currently is, current capabilities. And then we can take a little bit deeper dive on the types of customers you might be able to offer it to, the applications that we address. And then the biggest piece of this will be a lot of product images, a lot of the solutions that we've built over the last couple of years to give you some food for thought, some things that you might want to consider as far as how equipment is installed in enclosures, even really the types of customers that you're calling on. And then the final piece would be the support. How would you go about getting support for a specific project? And then again, because we are your partner, providing business development, anything that you might need in order to be able to create content on your website or specific collateral that you might want to have for your customer. We can talk a little bit about that as well. So defining IPSS, I guess at the highest level, what I'd like everybody on the phone to understand is we can offer a solution when your customer has a problem. So when you need a partner, you can't solve your specific customer's problem, we would like you to reach out to us. If you've ever been asked, to provide a NEMA 4X enclosure, that seems to be the magic word. The customers seem to ask for NEMA 4X enclosures quite often, and they want a UPS installed in there. That would potentially be an opportunity to talk about integration. Typically, our solutions center on the power systems. That would be the AC and DC power electronics, as well as the energy storage, whether it was lithium-ion batteries or VRLA batteries. But it really includes all of the support that's needed to develop and outline all of the project requirements. So we're not asking you guys to become experts in enclosures or ventilation requirements. That's really, where we are going to create value for you. We provide the equipment and all the accessories, the full comprehensive bill of material. We'll develop and kind of outline the scope of work for the entire project. We provide the costing, and that would be for the build itself or any additional testing that would be required, any on-site commissioning that would be required. and then all the support for the logistics, delivery, and installation as well. So most of you know HM Cragg from our master distribution partnership with Eaton. That is one part of our business. It's the single largest part of our business. But we're also a regional distributor for Generac here in the Midwest. In Minnesota, I also head up the agency, which is as a manufacturer's rep for Eaton here in Minnesota. We have a large field services capability throughout the Midwest, but headquartered here in Minnesota. We also have sales offices in Illinois and in Kansas. And primarily those businesses are focused on providing services around data center batteries or to the wireless or telecom industry or the utility industry as well. And again, DC and AC power systems installations is primarily where we're gonna be supporting those types of customers. And then the final piece is this integration capability, and we leverage really all of the other groups in order to provide a lot of the solutions that we can bring to the market. So how is HM Cragg different? Cody and I like to think that we make it easy for you to sell whatever it is that you need to sell. Our team invests in a relationship with you. You all know your field sales person. So out in the West would be Cheryl. Down in the Southeast would be Ben, Scott, Sean, and Doug. So we have, direct outside sales support for each and every one of you. We also have inside sales support, technical sales coordinators in Michelle, Nick, Mike, and Gene. I can use these first names because I'm very confident that you know who these people are, the people that are supporting you on a day-to-day basis. Applications engineering as well, Kevin Hobson, who's been in the industry for many, many years. And then finally, customer service, Jessica, Cindy, Michelle, Pam. These folks have been working with you for years and years. We appreciate your continued partnership. But again, we're invested in our partnership with you. I think most of you know that we're exclusive to Eaton. There are a lot of other distributors that you could work with that aren't really exclusive to Eaton. We carry a very large inventory position as well. Minnesota, in Virginia, Texas, and Nevada. We have over $4 million worth of product in stock and ready to ship same day. On the integration and services support, a lot of you are already getting to know Cody on the sales engineering side of things. Again, applications engineering support by Kevin. I haven't been in the field for a while, but I kind of play the role of commercial sales manager, working on strategy, some of the partner relationships that we have, and trying to help Cody and Kevin as they put together the individual opportunities. Inside, or in the services group, the folks that are actually doing the work for all of the integration, doing the assemblies, product modifications would be Nolan, kind of leading the charge as the services manager. We also have on board a master electrician, Brian Knox. So we actually are licensed in several states throughout the United States to be able to do on-site installation and contracting work. So we're very happy to be able to offer that if and when the opportunity arises that makes sense for a specific opportunity. We have lead integration technician who's also a journeyman electrician, Craymond. And then we have several trained and certified level 1 through level 4 integration technicians. So these folks are years and years in the industry, understand how these systems come together. They're part of the project discussions as we develop the scopes of work. They're providing all the detail that we need to account for all the labor that would be required. So we kind of approach these opportunities as a team. Some of our partners on the power side, again, Eaton is our primary partner. But where Eaton does not have a solution, and industrial UPSs, they don't have a full-fledged offering. So we work with a couple of other UPS manufacturers, Falcon and Marathon, that offer some industrial or high temperature rated UPSs or traffic specific UPSs. On the enclosures side, Cody and I have spent a couple of years now vetting quite a few different vendors to be able to offer, I guess, the most comprehensive enclosure solution that we can find. We still work with 3, maybe, I guess you could say 4. On the IT side, we primarily lead with Eaton, but we also work with Chatsworth. We work pretty pretty closely with CPI on their armor industrial enclosures, and a lot of the project examples you'll see in the presentation today are actually housed inside of armor enclosures. We've done some work with Rittal and a little bit more work with Saginaw Control and Engineering up in Saginaw, Michigan as well. We've looked at other manufacturers, but these are the folks that seem to be most responsive, can support our requirements, can assist us when we're going through the engineering and specification phase, and they don't require a minimum order quantity of 10 or more. So that really frees us up to be able to come at a specific project that may only be one of one, a very highly custom, but just one particular product. These are the folks that can actually support that type of business. Ventilation and cooling is a big piece of this as well. So we're working with Stulz, Fannenberg, and Rittal for their active cooling fans and air conditioners, but also some of their passive stuff that would support these specific applications. So why use integrated power? This is my project management background back when I did my MBA, but there's basically 3 project constraints. Whenever you're working on a project, you got to consider what the customer's budget's going to be, what the scope of that project's going to be, and then what the client's schedule is going to be. And if you change any one of those 3 parameters, it'll have an impact on the other 2. So if you decrease your budget, probably means I'm either going to have to limit my scope, or it might even push out the schedule, or it might have an impact on both of them. Same thing, if you say, hey, I need that thing done in 2 weeks, and typically the lead time is 6 weeks, you can probably anticipate it's going to cost you a little bit more money in order to be able to get it done in the time frame that your customer's requiring. So those are the things that we help you manage for your customer. We manage the scope because we can actually broaden the scope. We can take on more than just trying to sell the UPS. We can try to identify other things within that project that we can do in order to address the customer's full scope. Scheduling, we keep the customer on schedule, so we give you kind of a firm fix. You can anticipate that this project is going to be completed by a specific date. And we typically provide very good dates. Our lead times are typically not padded too much. But neither are we coming back and saying, hey, we're going to miss these ship dates. And then as far as the budget's concerned, same thing. When you consider all the things that we can bring under our umbrella and provide a budget for all of those things, it would be very difficult for your customer to be able to even try to figure out what those different elements would cost. And we provide that number to you. I'm kind of taking on all of the responsibility after that point. The big piece, though, is really the overall project quality. Rather than shipping 5 or 6 different SKUs, 5 or 6 different products, what we're now capable of doing is putting them all together and creating a system out of all of those products. So by creating a system and testing that system, we improve the project quality. There's no out-of-box failures because we've already had it powered. We've already run it through its startup procedure. We've already tested it for all the load testing or whatever would be required by the customer. We can write specific project tests if that's required. The big piece that Cody and I are super proud of, though, something that we've been working on for the last 12 months, is now all of our enclosed power systems are built to UL 508A. They are all built to UL 508A. They're not necessarily all going to carry the label, though, because if you would like us to add that label, there is additional cost and there's some additional work that we have to do in order to provide that label for a very custom specific opportunity. We have to define the scope of work. We've got to create a whole bunch of additional project documentation. There's very specific approval drawings that have to be created. There's a testing and inspection procedure that we have to follow. And again, once we've completed all that, then we can provide that certification. That would come at an increased cost. But I'll just go back to what I said earlier. All enclosed power systems are now built to that UL 508A standard. We won't label them all, but they're all built there. And as you see some of these examples, you'll see how we've changed some of our wiring, how much cleaner a lot of these builds actually look now that we're following a standard process for each and every one of our builds. We're very happy to be able to offer that to you. So let's talk for a minute about industrial enclosures, the challenges, the types of enclosures you might see out there, standard designs that we've come up with to try to minimize the time it takes to actually quote, and then, our capability around custom enclosures as well. So there's some problems. Anytime you want to stick a UPS or power equipment and certainly batteries, there's some challenges that we face. We got to continue to be able to allow for serviceability and access to the equipment that's installed. These enclosures typically are designed to filter out dust and particulates. They need to be water resistant, at least water resistant in most cases. And there's various different levels of that water resistance that we'll talk about. In some cases, we need to be concerned about chemical or corrosion resistance as well. We're always going to be concerned about ventilation and airflow, and also cooling. And as we talk about this next slide here, the big problem here when we stick a UPS, whether it's a small 2U single phase UPS or one of the larger Eaton 93 PMs, when we stick that thing into an enclosure, think of it as skin over skin, we have the potential of restricting airflow, and that's going to have an impact on how we dissipate heat. And as you guys all know, as professionals in the power quality industry, heat is not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the power electronics, and it's more specifically not a good thing for batteries. VRLA batteries, for example, all of the ratings for life expectancy and what the end of life runtime would be is all calculated based on maintaining a perfect 77 degrees for the entire lifespan of the battery. But for every 15 degrees above 77 degrees you go, you can see about a 50% reduction in life expectancy. So at 77 degrees, batteries will last, all other considerations perfect, could probably last, let's say, 5 years. But if you go 15 degrees over 77 degrees up to 92 degrees, you can expect that you're going to start half-lifing. And that 5-year battery is now going to only be about 2.5 years, might be even less, depending on what else is going on within the enclosure, how many times you've had to go to battery, how many discharges, how deep were those discharges. So those are other considerations. So heat in a cabinet, bad. VRLA batteries have another thing that we have to be concerned about, and that's that under certain circumstances, they can off-gas. They can actually vent out hydrogen. And as Cody said earlier, hydrogen concentrations above 4% can be explosive. And the last thing that we want to do is sell you a bomb. Most inspectors would take exception to that. I think you and your customers would probably take exception to that. So we need to make sure that we're mitigating and monitoring that. And as you'll see in a couple more slides here, that's exactly what we do. So UL ratings, this may be a repeat for a lot of you, but I just want to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page as far as what these UL ratings mean when your customer asks you for a specific enclosure type. And as I said, most customers seem to ask for NEMA 4X or type 4X. But what does that really mean? And what does that do to the engineering and the design of your system? So let's start at the top. The type 1, that's what most enclosures that would be in a regulated indoor environment would be. An IT enclosure, a 2 or a 4-post rack sitting in a network closet or in a data center. That would be a type 1 enclosure, fully vented. Anything in the atmosphere would get through it, get into the connected or get into the equipment that's inside. But what does it do? It does two things. It protects the user from incidental contact with whatever's inside, because with the doors closed and the sidewalls on, you can't touch the equipment, the front or the back. So there's that level of protection. But the other thing it'll do is falling dirt coming, like from the ceiling or something like that. It will protect the equipment from anything that may be coming from overhead. So that's type 1, the least level of protection, but for an indoor, well-regulated environment, that's the rack that we're most used to, I guess. Next level up would be type 12. It's also considered an indoor enclosure. It is basically, it's filtrated. The air coming in is actually filtered through it. So it protects against dust, lint. It has the ability to protect the equipment for some dripping water or some light splashed liquids. It typically has a solid front door rather than a fully fully vented front door, but they will also have ventilation fans on them. The ventilation fan will have a filter and a grill assembly. So in an industrial environment, where would you see these? In an industrial environment, manufacturing space, somewhere where you might have not as well regulated as far as the air quality is concerned, then we might want to look at a type 12. Again, but indoor. Type 3R, that's your next level up. This is a true outdoor enclosure. It can be used indoor, but it can also be used outdoor because it now provides a level of protection against rain and sleet, snow, and ice. And basically the test is, as long as the water or the snow is coming down at less than a certain angle, and as long as the water is not able to permeate or get into the enclosure, then it's going to carry the type 3 rating. The next level up would be the type 4, and then what that one is fully sealed. So now we've got airtight. You can hose it down, you can wash it down. If you're putting it into an emergency application for like emergency telecom communications for the fire department or first responders, those enclosures have to carry this type 4 rating because as the fire department comes through the building, if it's on fire, they're going to be spraying water everywhere. And you got to make sure that none of that's going to get into the equipment and short out the radios that those guys are using to keep in contact with one another. X is, in many cases, it's stainless steel, but what the X in the rating means really is its corrosion resistance. So it could be stainless steel, it could be 304 or 316 stainless steel, but it could also be a polycarbonate. It could also be aluminum. So any one of those three would qualify as X, but most people recognize or identify when they say NEMA 4X, they think stainless steel. And in many cases, that's what we default to as well, unless we have a conversation about weight or other specifics for your project where we might want to offer one of the other options.
So I've got a couple comments on this slide really quick. So in the industry, you'll hear a lot of terms being thrown out as NEMA enclosures or NEMA type enclosures. HM Cragg is specifically focusing on labeling these as type enclosures. That is the key word to know if an enclosure is UL listed. So a NEMA enclosure may or may not be UL listed, but if it is labeled as a type enclosure, we know that it's UL listed. Another thing I wanted to point out is every type here, type 1 through 4 and 4X, we do have air conditioning and ventilation for every scenario here. So we have air conditioners that are type 12 all the way up to 4X, and also ventilation fans that are type 12 up to 4X.
Exactly. I didn't really talk about the differences between IP or UL, but typically most people refer to these as a type or a NEMA type. It's really the type, as Cody mentioned, but occasionally you'll see these requests for the IP, like an IP54 or an IP66. They're saying the same thing. It's all about water incursion coming into the enclosure. No questions on that, Cody?
Nope.
Okay, so we've done a lot of work over the last 3 years to try to make this as easy and as quick as possible around mounting like 2U and 3U Eaton UPSs, EBMs, and all the rest of the equipment that might be needed for power distribution into a type-rated enclosure, type 12, type 3, type 4. And we've come up with several standards. 6 represented here from 6U all the way up to 42U, that our partners, CPI, for their armor, they've already done all the design work for these. So we already have drawings, we have pricing. Cody's developed a tool to be able to select the enclosure and then also pick out exactly what accessories would be required. And those accessories run kind of the gamut, and I'll talk about that. So 6 through 42U, they'll always be 24 inches wide, so they're going to look a lot like an IT enclosure, right? So it'll fit 4-post rails on the inside of that enclosure, and they'll fit any type of rack-mounted gear, whether that's a UPS or a customer may own a switch, like a Cisco switch, as long as it will fit on those standard rails, then we can actually house it inside of this enclosure. Just think of these enclosures that I'm talking about right now as the industrial version of an IT enclosure, because form, fit, and function, it is the same as the IT, but it has the UL ratings. So available in type 12, 3R, and 4. Freestanding, we can do some wall mount or pole mounted stuff. It can be done in mild carbon, or it can be done in aluminum and stainless, as I mentioned, if you want that X rating. Can be single or multi-door, or could even be bayed. So our typical standard design on these things have doors front and doors rear. So you're able to open the front door with key lock, 3-point latching mechanism. You can see what's going on with the equipment on the front side, make any adjustments to the user interface. But for ease of installation and making connections, you can also open the back door, and now you've got access to all of the terminal blocks or the receptacles, whatever other stuff that you might need inside of this enclosure. Locking, padlocking doors, 4-point mount. So Cody also mentioned then the ventilation. So these all have ventilation fan choices that we can make, filter grill assemblies, louvers, whatever climate control would be required. We also include a 6-inch by 6-inch gland plate for being able to bring in the user conductors for both one set for the input, one set for the output. There's lift eyes. This one's actually illustrated with the sunscreen, but I think the next slide actually talks a little bit about some of the standard options. So in an outdoor application, we might recommend interior insulation. So we'll actually add insulation to all the interior surfaces. We'll add a sun shield across the top, rain gutters and shrouds. That's all, to make sure that this thing has more watertight integrity. Air conditioners based on the heat dissipation of not only the UPS that we're adding, but maybe all of the users' equipment as well. There might be a requirement for heaters, timers, or thermostats. We might need some bus bar or any kind of DIN rail custom power distribution. We can do removable side panels. We can add additional leg stands if we want to get the enclosure up off of the ground. And then some other fun things like lighting kits, window kits, and then we can also add sub panels to do DIN rail mounted equipment. We can either do a sub panel or we can do an inset panel, which we mount two sets of those rails to be able to mount equipment, and it kind of cleans it up. You'll see some examples of that here in a moment. So drawings, we have drawings for all these enclosures already prepared. So if you have a project and you want to be able to put something in front of your customer, we won't make you wait because we already got them prepared. We've got this wall mount one for a 2U device. We also have the 42U, 24 wide, 42U tall, 42 inches deep. And you can see, it's illustrated with ventilation fans, but again, we could put just about anything that we need for ventilation and cooling. So a little bit more on ventilation and cooling then. Ventilation fans, there's a variety of different sizes that you can select based on the airflow required to get any of the dissipated heat inside out. We have one ventilation fan up to almost 600 CFM. We can use multiple fans on the enclosure. We can add vents and filter grill assemblies if we're just doing a type 12 enclosure. We can add specific containment. Cody's done some design work. Everybody on the phone, I'm assuming, knows hot aisle, cold aisle, where you add containment on a row of racks. Well, we've taken that same concept and integrated it inside of some of the larger UPS assemblies so that we can create kind of a dead space, and we don't get hot air and cold air mixing through the enclosure, which makes the air conditioner much more efficient as it's trying to take care of all the heat coming off the UPS. So we actually add this plenum in order to eliminate that mixing. We do closed loop air conditioners. Again, these can be indoor or outdoor rated air conditioners in mild or in stainless steel. We do them either in DX or chilled water, universal voltages, single and 3-phase. We can do them on the roof. We can do them on the door. We can do them side mount. So basically, the only thing you need to know on this really would be, we've considered this We have a pretty good understanding of how all of these different parts need to come together in order to package your system. We talked a moment ago about some of the other problems that you face besides heat dissipation. The other big thing is the potential to have hydrogen gas vented into the cabinet, especially when we're talking a type 4, which is sealed. It's completely sealed away from whatever the ambient environment is. So if for whatever reason the batteries were to start venting, there's really no way unless we take some kind of mitigation to eliminate that problem. And what we do is we have a hydrogen sensor that we wire in through some contacts, and then we have a dual purpose venting system which will actuate at 1% hydrogen concentrations and also sends up an alarm to the user. And at 2%, it sends out a second alarm. But at 1%, it's automatically going to start venting the enclosure and bringing in fresh air and exhausting all the air on the inside of the cabinet. This device circulates at 500 CFM. It's dual purpose. So same thing. If we have a problem with the air conditioner and the temperature gets over a certain threshold, we can set that threshold using thermostat. Then this system is also going to actuate. And we get the alarm. So this is just kind of a quick picture. Again, it's mechanical louvers on the bottom. It's tied back through contacts to the hydrogen sensor and to the thermostat. And with those closed, when those contacts close, then the louvers on the bottom of the unit open, the fan actuates, and it starts bringing in fresh air. So here's a quick snapshot of one of the systems that actually Cody worked on, a type 4 enclosure, doors front and rear with a plinth base. It has interior insulation, sunscreens, drip guards, active cooling. You can see this is on the front here, not an air conditioner. This is actually that venting system that I've been talking about. But here it is in real life. So this top left picture is actually about a 5,000 BTU air conditioner, door mounted. And then on the back, we've got the hydrogen purging system, fully insulated on the interior. And then we came up with a racking system in order to be able to mount some freestanding UPSs. On the back, this is the most interesting part, I think, is you can see the hydrogen sensor here, the cutouts for the venting. And then you can see we added a DIN rail with an inset panel, and we provided terminal blocks, breakers for all of the devices that require power. So that would be one for the air conditioner, one for the vent, one for the hydrogen sensor, convenience receptacles. And then I mentioned that 6-inch gland plate. So we'll add these terminal blocks here for the customer's input and output power to just make it super simple. Everything inside of the enclosure has been pre-wired and labeled off so that the customer knows exactly where those labels go and what's power and what. But all they need to do is bring in their input and output connectors. We make it very, very simple for them at the customer site. So those are standard enclosures. Now, more work this year and probably 6 months last year has been focused on some of the custom capabilities that we have. Again, working with CPI on their armor, we actually design and engineer a project and application specific enclosure for the product that we need to use. And this can be a 2-use rack mounted device. We've got designs that we've worked on all the way up to 93 PM, Eaton 93 PM 100 kVA system. So they're designed in-house. Cody works on CAD and SolidWorks, so we're able to create drawings and do all kinds of reference material for you so that you can actually see what it is that we're proposing. These enclosures are all manufactured to type 12 or 3 or 4, can also be corrosion resistant. Again, the big piece here is no minimum order quantity. This is a big deal because if you work with some of the suppliers that we've dealt with over the last 4 years or so, have a minimum order quantity of 10. And most of what we've been doing, not all, but most, is quantity one of one. It is a completely unique solution, and it's really only a couple of these partners that we've been working with that can actually do this work and have the commitment to helping us design these systems. The good news is once we have it designed once, it becomes a standard for us, and we're able to do it again and again. 28 standard colors, but we can basically do any color that you need, any custom color. It would be a small upcharge. There's a little bit of additional cost. So if you tell me you need BMW blue, whatever that logo is for the BMW logo on the front of the hood, we can replicate that. If it's an RAL color, we can offer pretty much any RAL color as long as it's available from a supplier. But if it's a very specific non-RAL custom color, then we need to talk about whatever the cost is going to be in the time in order to match that up. The other piece here on these custom enclosures, we typically want to supply the power components, whether that's the UPS, the batteries, power distribution, and any of the ancillary equipment. But if your customer has other equipment that they'd like us to install, a server, a switch, power supply. We did a project for a manufacturer where they wanted industrial computers mounted. So they shipped us their industrial computers, and we were able to mount those into the enclosures before we shipped them. We welcome that opportunity to have you or your customer supply whatever that other content would be. We're more than happy to install that. And I'll take it one step further. So we are Eaton. We're going to lead with Eaton. We're going to try to use that solution. But if for whatever reason you find yourself on a competitor's UPS, we're not going to be able to supply that. But we're more than happy to figure out a way to package that solution for you. Cody is working on a job right now where GE is the preferred. The user, the end customer, already has some number of GE UPSs already installed, and we could not convince them that they needed to consider Eaton. So our partner is going to ship us a GE UPS. We've already gotten the drawings. We know exactly what we need to do in order to create the enclosure. We're not supplying the UPS. We're just including that as part of the scope of work. Oh, look at this. So this is actually the enclosures that we're working on for that customer. Again, these are purpose-built, and every element of this has been taken into consideration: the footprint of the equipment, the height, width, depth of the equipment that's going in there. How do we vent? How do we circulate the airflow? How do we handle all the heat dissipation? How do we land conductors? Whatever is required, we have all of that done in advance of going to manufacturing. And we have submittal documentation, approval drawings that you and your customer need to sign off on before we ever get to that manufacturing point. So again, these are things that will supply you in order to be able to sell the opportunity and get the order. Schematic drawings, one-line diagrams, and then if there's custom power distribution, this would be an external enclosure that's going to bolt to the sidewall of that main enclosure. And then so we do all the terminal block counts, all the circuit breaker counts. There's some controls that need to be included. We're actually going to be adding an industrial computer, a little PLC, a programmable logic controller, in order to be able to consolidate all of the signaling that the customer needs to get out in order to manage this thing. This is going to be installed remotely outside the customer's main building, but they want to be able to wire everything back into the building management system so that they can see what's going on inside the enclosure, get all their alarming. This is the biggest enclosure lineup that we've done to date. Believe it or not, all these doors, there's 6 doors on each lineup. That's one assembly. So there's 6 doors, but that's one assembly. It ships on one pallet. We did not populate the equipment, and this is going to be a large battery charger with a couple of strings of batteries. This is actually shipping to Puerto Rico. The application is energy storage for off-grid, like peak shaving. So customer worked with us in order to design the footprint of the enclosure, the number of doors, all of the mounting points for the battery racks that are going to be installed. And then the other thing that we did was We insulated the enclosure. We added foil-backed, I think that's about a 1-inch foil-backed insulation. We added the mission venting, we added the air conditioning, and then we added the hydrogen sensor to this design. That was the limit of our work on this particular project. It was pretty interesting undertaking, a lot of time invested in making sure that we understood all the mount points for the battery racks, for example, or how the charger was actually going to be installed on the interior of the rack. So that's it on enclosures. I would say we could take it sidebar if anybody has questions at the end, or again, I'm looking forward to getting out in the field. We can talk a little bit more about enclosures, but that's probably more than you wanted to know to begin with. So, okay, let's talk applications. Everything that we've worked on really doesn't have anything to do with the data center, or at least it doesn't look like the typical data center. It has been edge applications, the Internet of Things, so we're seeing a part of the edge. Harsh or extreme environments, high and low temperatures, water and humidity might be in the air. We got dusty, dirty, especially industrial manufacturing. We've had some situations where we needed to figure out what to do about caustic chemicals, H2S gas, for example, which is very corrosive, and high-powered electronics do not like that. They tend to autonomously disassemble after some period of time of being exposed to H2S gas. A lot of these things are going outdoors, indirect sunlight, and then we've had some number of these requests that are for mobile or transportable designs as well. The verticals where we're going, distributed networks or IDFs, the network closet, high-tech manufacturing, specifically around industrial or process control. We do a lot of work for machine builders and OEMs where our device is actually integrated into a much larger machine, for example. Water and wastewater treatment's a fan favorite. We've done quite a bit for transportation. I've got a few examples on the transportation application to show you. Oil and gas is probably our number one, probably won't be going forward, at least not for the foreseeable future, at $20 a barrel. A lot of customers are telling us that their customers are slowing down as far as oil and gas infrastructure. Air and marine, military and government agencies. So we have seen opportunities and done work for all of those different verticals. Some of the things that we're seeing more and more now, though, healthcare, retail, plant floor, distribution facilities, and connected cars, that edge of the network that I was talking about, that seems to be on the front of everybody's mind right now. My mind works in a strange way. I think what it is, what it was, what it shall be, and automatically I think of a reference from Good Morning Vietnam. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but he's doing his thing at 4 a.m. and he starts talking like Walter Cronkite, and I'm not going to do the voice, but that's what came to mind for some reason. So what it was, what IPSS, Integrated Power Systems and Services, what it was, I don't think could be explained. It was called Advanced Technology Solutions, ATS. My brain always went to an ATS, right? Service rated entrance, and it wasn't what it was. So we've taken great pains to try to figure out other ways to explain everything, and hopefully coming out of this presentation, it might make a little bit more sense. But what it is today, proven capabilities, things that we've worked on include, but are not limited to, inventory and logistics management, assembly services, modifications, enclosed power systems engineering. I'll use that word again, engineering. E-houses, shelters, sheds, and trailers, field services, and then edge infrastructure. Those are kind of the broad categories of what have we done that we would call integration. So on the inventory and logistics management piece, large project rollouts, we are a distributor, right? You guys expect us to maintain inventory position, but we want to take it a step further, where absolutely we'll push a truckload of 9PXs out the door and ship them to you the same day. We would love to do that, but what we really like to do is kit and bundle a bunch of stuff for you and then handle the logistics and the timing of those shipments so that we get the right product to the right site at the right time. And we can provide all the shipping documentation or control documentation. We can kit things up and shrink wrap them so when it lands at the customer site, they don't have to wonder whether or not they got all their parts and pieces. They get a bill of lading that says you're supposed to have 3 boxes. They look at the pallet and, oh, it's got 3 boxes. I must have got everything. So we love doing that kind of work. Pretty simple, but it gets a little bit more complicated when you're talking about an opportunity that we worked on last year. The client needed to ship 367 sites all over the country. So what we did was come up with a way to be able to do 25 skids a day, 1 pallet per site. There were 3 boxes on the pallet, and inside those boxes were 2 9PXs, 2 network cards, an EATS, an EMP, and a 2-post rack kit. Actually, 2 2-post rack kits. So all that went into those 3 boxes, got kitted, got shrink wrapped. We provided the shipping documentation, the release dates. We scheduled everything so that everything showed up when it was supposed to. Basically, at the same time, concurrently with one of the installation technicians showing up at the site, so nothing was lost. Enclosure assembly, rack and stack. So again, this is pretty straightforward. We typically use a lot of Eaton here, but there could potentially be some third-party equipment. UPSs, EBMs, this stuff is not really engineered. It's really more configured to order. Web management cards are included, but we can add racks or full-blown enclosures. We can even do the industrial rated enclosures. And then we add all those other parts and pieces, wire and cable management, environmental monitoring, whatever. But here's the other thing is that we'll do, when we do these assemblies, we'll actually start the UPS up. So we connect the battery, we power the unit up, we run it through its startup procedure, whatever Eaton's specific startup procedure is. We can do some load testing, just validate that everything is working the way it's supposed to. We can take voltages and currents coming off of an ePDU, for example. And then we can provide you kind of an electrical inspection checklist so that you know that what we shipped was functional as it left the factory. We can provide, whatever custom documentations you might need, some middle drawings, installation manuals. We basically just provide all that so you don't have to go hunting for everything. But we need to make sure that we know what it is, what your expectations are as we're working on the project. Here's another example. We sold a bunch of these were 52U, Cody, 53U, 23-inch wide enclosures, 24-inch wide. These were custom enclosures, so custom height. Client wanted to have ePDUs installed before we shipped, so we actually had to depackage everything, install the ePDUs, and then repackage everything. It was interesting. This was part of a larger project where we were actually doing some custom painting on some lithium-ion battery cabinets and providing 93 PM. So this was an interesting one. I mentioned oil and gas. So oil well pump controls in a Type 12 enclosure, 11 kVA of UPS. You guys are familiar with the 9PX 11K. Has an external battery already and a transformer. Well, this customer needed some ungodly number of hours of runtime, so we included 9 EBMs. We did not ship it with all the batteries installed. We depopulated all of the batteries, but we did complete all the pre-wiring on the backside of the enclosure. All the customer needed to do was reinstall all the batteries before they were off and running. Product modifications is the third capability that we have. So that's standard products with some minor alterations that really don't have an effect or an impact on warranty or UL. Those are the 2 keys here. Is anything that we do, we don't want to have, we don't want to have Eaton say, sorry, warranty's canceled, or you're breaking UL and we're not going to stand behind the product. So it's typically something that we'll work back through Eaton product management on. And, think 9PX where we have terminal block on the input and the output. We can very easily add line cords, for example, rather than having to do that as a hardwired connection once it hits the customer site. We'll, do enclosures and holes and cutouts if that's required. We can flash firmware up or down depending on what's usable for. We got a number of OEMs that actually include 5115s, for example, on their equipment, and their firmware that controls the machine is not compatible with the latest revision of the firmware on the Eaton UPS. So we actually downward flash every one of those, and they buy several hundred of those a year. So we're doing that kind of work as well. Here's a good example of one of the line cords on the 9155. We add an input and an output line cord. Cody actually specified some custom power distribution panels that sit at the bottom of this enclosure, pin and sleeve style connectors on a custom inset panel. So we have the inset panels fabricated here in Minnesota, powder coated, and then we actually create the power distribution panel here at the facility. So now we get into integration. How do I differentiate integration from assembly? Assembly is standard products with, typically it's from one vendor. It's more configuration than anything else. It's not really engineering. It's just validating that we get the right runtime. Once we get to integration, now we could be using components, standard components, again, off-the-shelf standard components, but it could be from multiple different vendors. And what we're doing is we're validating that we've got sufficient cooling, or we've got sufficient power distribution, we've got whatever other things that would be required, and all the parts and pieces are going to work together, even if we're using Eaton UPSs and somebody else's battery, for example, on a 9155. In this case, we're using an uptime rack that's 13,000 BTUs at the base inside of a 32U enclosure. We needed to make sure we had sufficient cooling. So again, pretty straightforward. This particular assembly wasn't rocket science. But again, it's going to be around UPS and any related power components, IT components, if you want to supply those, as I mentioned earlier, specific enclosures that we would like to be able to use, and then the same process at the end of the project. We provide that qualification and certification testing. We can also generate custom user documents, system drawings, submittals, whatever at the front end, so that you've got all of that in hand. This was a more interesting project that we did a couple of years ago, but I really liked it. It was one that really kind of got our thinking caps on. This was specifically for a mining application, so mining operation up in British Columbia. This system was going to be populated inside of an e-house, and it was backing up all of these different systems for conveyors and loaders. Basically, the system was comprised of 12 kilowatt blade up system, a maintenance bypass, and 4 EBMs. Relay Car Power Expert. The problem with blade ups is it's 208 volt 3-phase, and in Canada they have 600 volts. So the customer wanted a transformer populated inside of the rack, and we're like, okay, we probably could figure that out, but how do we pull that off? Well, we pulled it off by using Unistrut. You can see in the bottom left-hand picture there. We actually created an assembly, mounted it to the rails, the framing rails of the enclosure, bolted it all in place, and then that was able then to bolt directly to the transformer. So we did 6 of these systems for the customer, and this is already at least 2 years ago. Pretty straightforward. Once we got that done, we had to do all pin and sleeve connectors between the maintenance bypass, packaged everything up, maintenance bypass at the top, 12U. We did not ship this with the EBMs. The customer actually wanted us to store the EBMs until they were ready to finish the installation after the units had been fully integrated. We packaged everything up and shipped it crated, actually. Another small enclosure, 2U device with an EBM on the inside. This is a wall-mounted enclosure in a Type 3 enclosure. So there's a fan mounted in the ceiling of this enclosure. We added some custom power distribution to turn what is a line-corded device into a hardwired device. So we added convenience receptacles on this one, and then terminal blocks, again, just for the input and the output at the customer's facility. They were actually integrating it into a controls cabinet that they had assembled, and that's the picture up on the top right there. So the plan was to mount this UPS system for power protection and some additional runtime. They were going to bolt that to the sidewall of that much larger enclosure there. Another oil and gas pump controls, again, 4 systems that we shipped to large oil field. Actually, this was another really interesting, these are Type 4 enclosures. Cody, you want to talk about these ones?
Yeah, so this was a really unique opportunity for us. This is going directly at the wellhead on a oil field. So the requirements they had was 6 kVA of capacity with a 120 volt input and a 120 volt output. So we utilized a high temp UPS with a main input transformer to supply the 6 kVA power. We've got about 4 hours of runtime in two 5U battery modules with dedicated chargers, and then a break before make bypass / output isolation transformer here. So we included all of the engineering for all of this on the front side, got the design approved, and then worked with a couple of different manufacturers to supply the complete solution. As you can see, there's quite a bit of distribution they required for this project. There's a lot of back and forth between transformers, creating the 120 in to 240 to 120 out. So we have a multiple voltages available on the output as well. We've split it through the system. So on the top section, we have about 8 120 volt single pole breakers. And at the bottom, we have 208 volt single phase breakers, all connected with Eaton breakers with custom bus bar distribution across each of the breakers. One neat thing about this is we included a contact relay card onto the UPS, which if there was a utility failure and we went on battery, it would initiate the strobe red flasher on top of the enclosure. So at any given time, you can look out at the installations and see if there's an issue with the system.
Excellent.
So this is all mounted on our custom inset DIN rail panels. So a lot of the things we see is our mounting rails are near or right at the edge of the opening of the enclosure to facilitate the deep UPSs and devices on the inside. So we've come up with these custom inset panel designs to allow us to have DIN rail or any panel mount equipment to be installed on those rack rails without protruding outside of the enclosure space available.
Thanks, Cody. Dave Hurlbut had a question regarding runtime. Dave, was that on the blade up solution that we were showing for the mining equipment? And if it was, I actually don't remember the answer. I have to get back to you on that one. Another oil and gas. This has been an ongoing project for about 3 years, going up to the Bakken oil field up in North Dakota. So we standardized on a Eaton Ferrups 3.1 kVA rack mount with the bypass on another one of these custom inset panels. And the customer wanted to utilize some front terminal C&D style batteries. So we created the cabling wiring harnesses to be able to use that. Ferrups actually one of the only products from Eaton that would actually work on, other than some of their larger three-phase stuff. You can see, again, same thing on the wiring and connectivity. We make it very easy. We handle all the intra-cabinet wiring for the UPS specifically. Breakers to be able to, what was the other device here? What was that second breaker for, Cody? Oh, I'm sorry, that's the input breaker and the output breaker.
Those are required for the Ferrups input and output circuits.
Yep. And then the terminal blocks on that middle top picture, that's just where you bring in the power conductors for the input and the output. Okay, engineered solutions. This is where we've been spending a large amount of our time now, starting with a concept, a drawing, or a complete specification. We really want to work with you as a collaborator through the entire project cycle. So what I'm trying to say here is, this is when you come to us saying, I have this request and I have absolutely no idea what to do with it, help me. And so that's exactly what we're prepared to do. So we work through, what are the project definitions? How do we develop the scope of work, the schedule, the budget? We come up with the component specifications and we do all of our supplier selection, come up with our own internal costing, and then we prepare a bill of material. Ultimately, you'll get a proposal with your cost, your price. And then once we have all that, where that's what you want to take, we get approval drawings, manufacturing drawings, and submittals put together. We go into the manufacturing phase. Once everything has been, like, again, these enclosures, I didn't mention this earlier, but these custom enclosures, depending on what vendor you work with, you could be 20 to 24 weeks on a custom enclosure, but not the guys that we work with. CPI for their armor stuff is usually a week to 10 days to get approval drawings through their system, and then another 15 business days to get the manufacturing completed and get it out the door. So I'm saying within a month, we can typically get from design all the way through to have an enclosure on our factory floor ready to be worked on. And the other thing is they are such a great partner that they handle a lot of the preliminary modifications that need to happen with the enclosure, so that it minimizes what we have to do. Like, we got to get a hole or a cutout for an air conditioner. Well, they'll do that hole and cutout before they actually go to fabricate, or before they go to paint, so that when they powder coat everything, you don't have any rough edges, you don't have any uncoated edges. That's a big deal. So we are super pumped to be working with those guys. And 4 weeks from design to delivery is unheard of in the industry. It's phenomenal. Integration system build, again, we've got all the resources internally to be able to do all of this work, even if it requires electrical contracting. And we want to do the inspections to make sure that we're up to code. You'll see that especially when we start talking about shelters and sheds and things like that, which is much larger installation. We'll do that startup, we'll do the testing, we provide the validation, we can do the ETL certification for UL 508A, and then we're there from start to end as far as project management, getting everything to site, handling all the logistics. This particular one was relatively straightforward. Outdoor rated enclosure with a 9155. Stainless steel. This was going to actually sit at the end of a dock on a Navy base, so it needed to be corrosion resistant and it needed belt and suspenders. So it was stainless steel, but then the customer asked for 2 coats of marine grade epoxy to be painted over it. Dual door. We had industrial rated air conditioner. We also had our venting system on there. So this thing was full boat. A great example. This was actually a really early example of our capability for outdoor rated enclosures. So this is the video that we looked at. Cody, you want to talk about these briefly again, or do you think the video sufficed?
I can touch on it again. So this is 2 systems that we had the requirement for utilizing the 9355 30 kVA base runtime, so internal batteries only. We have the 3-breaker bypass included, like we had talked about, in separate enclosures. So if there was a scenario where you cannot drop the load and you can throw it into maintenance bypass, the UPS or the UPS assembly itself can be completely torn out and replaced on site. Hot, humid environments, a lot of heat being thrown off of the UPS. So we've got 13,000 BTU air conditioners installed. And then a similar situation with the hydrogen sensor, hydrogen vent kit, and temperature actuation on the back side of the enclosure. There it is, yeah. So another design element to this was the sun shield with offset lift eyes. So those are permanently installed to the enclosure. Does not need to be removed. It's a dual purpose sun shield, so it provides isolation from the heating of the actual roof to the enclosure itself, but also is a drip shield on all 4 edges of our enclosure. We also included 2 accessible removable panels for maintenance on this UPS. The 9355 requires 36 inches of clearance in a typical installation for that specific reason. So certified technician can get out there and access everything they need to access inside of the UPS via the right side access panels. You can see on the far right picture here is our 3-breaker bypass. We utilize the tap offs from those sections to power up our critical devices, the hydrogen sensor, the emergency vent kit, And then on the input side, the utility side, we're running our air conditioner as to not utilize any of the capacity of the UPS. So minimum runtime allows us to do that. If there was an outage, it would be a minimal time where it's collecting heat in the enclosure. Once the UPS sees the utility back on, it'll start climate controlling again. This
Anything
kind of
else
outlines
on these ones that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so we'll take care of all the distribution inside the cabinet as we had talked about. So when you see this system on site, the end user, all they really need to do is hook up the main input and the main output. Everything else is really taken care of on our side in our warehouse.
Good. Thanks, Cody. Actually, I think the next slide's yours too.
Okay, yeah, this is another opportunity that we had for a custom unit. This is where I start to put on my PDU hat a little bit. We had an aerospace testing facility who was not allowed to change any of the facility wiring in the space they were in. They had 3-phase 208 30 amp circuits available, and they had a piece of equipment that required a 60 amp draw. So we worked with myself and Kevin, the applications engineer, to design a device that will do just that. We have on the next slide here, it'll show 2 input device where we have a selection of input protection as well as some safety devices built into here for out of phase detection, a capacity sensor to make sure we're not drawing 60 amps off of one side, as well as some indication lights to make sure that the customer is aware of how this device is operating, if there's an issue, what that issue might be, and as well as a selector switch for the main input output. So we did all this design work up front, got it approved by the end user, and then we went to manufacturing for these small little, almost a junction box type product. So you can see in here, pretty wiring heavy solution, very custom. We've got the input protection for input 1, input 2, both 30 amp input circuits. We do have the source phase detection relays, which is checking phase A, B, C off of each source to make sure they're both in a clockwise rotation and they're all matching. This is a precautionary step before we bring the inputs to a main junction point within the box. Another issue they had on a previous design was input 1 could be connected and powered up while input 2 was not. And on the previous design, there was a safety consideration because if the source 1 was installed and the second one would have live voltage on it before it was plugged into the second source. So that's where we implemented the source availability contactors to make sure it cannot travel upstream to the other cord. The next set of contactors you see is full ampacity verification. So exactly what I had said is we're not going to be drawing 60 amps off of a single 30 amp source. It's going to kill the main output contactor before that happens. So very custom opportunity. We had a lot of design work into this, and we're pretty proud with the product that we developed for this application.
Thanks, Cody. All right, we're wrapping things up here pretty quickly. Just a couple more examples here. Water, wastewater pump control system, water, wastewater treatment, oil and gas. It seems to be those are the 2 particular applications we see the most opportunity. This was a Falcon system that we ended up using in a high temperature in a pump control station actually overseas. We ended up with Falcon because they needed to have up to 65 C and they wanted very small footprints. So we ended up with 3 kVA UPSs, 3 maintenance bypasses, 3 5U EBMs, and a custom power distribution panel up at the top there, all in one 42U rack. And yeah, so it wasn't overly complicated, but it was interesting in form, I guess. Transportation and lighting, just wanted to point out that we have done some larger systems. You saw the 9355. This is a 9155 with C&D style front terminal batteries, DC disconnect, foil backed insulation on a, another one of these custom enclosures. Air conditioning has been incorporated. So all of the design considerations around how do we get this UPS in and out? How do we handle all the serviceability of the batteries? How do we mitigate temperature? I'm not sure. This might have predated our using the hydrogen sensors and the mission critical venting.
Right. Yeah, we had the Gore-Tex style vent packs or vent kits with this solution.
Yeah, thank you. This one had, was this tube style also, if I'm not mistaken?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. All right. So HM Cragg, we have a subsidiary or a wholly owned subsidiary down in Chicago called SPSC. They've, over the last few years, have been building some pretty interesting solutions, specifically for substations and utility applications. In some cases, you could see them on the microwave, shortwave rate, or not shortwave, but the microwave telecommunications as well. But in a substation, what they've done, this would be one solution, for example, would be a mobile substation. They roll these things up to the actual substation that needs some service work completed. And then we provided, for example, a trailer mounted controls backup system, a battery charger, stainless steel enclosure with some front terminal batteries. You'll see a theme here, but what was even more cool was this thing. They built out a full-blown trailer and have been doing this for several years. And a really, really interesting solution. This is something that we would like to try to offer to all of you. If you have any utility customers, telecommunication customers where they need to have multiple voltage DC, because this thing can provide both 125 and 48 volt DC for an extended run. And in some cases, we can add generation and some other equipment as well. I would like to play this video. Cody, do you want to talk over this one again?
Yep. So I actually had the opportunity to go down to Chicago and help assembly on this particular trailer you're going to see here. We really want to utilize this with all of our partners. Right now, it's a big hit in Chicago with our SPSC customers for exactly that, for utility substations, telecom services. This creates a temporary power source for those DC type applications where you need to service your switchgear or other DC powered equipment, and you have no real good way on site to keep the loads powered. So the utility companies will take these power trailers and hook them up to their systems before they tear down or they take down the on-site power devices. So the guys down in Chicago have developed this system design, all based on kind of the same architecture, heavy-duty trailer system for a dual input AC source with also dual voltage output. So they have two specific chargers in here. This one particularly was 130 volt DC and 48 volt DC. And they have a series of transfer switches within the trailer to switch AC sources as well as switch the DC output. So they've got a single string, a 130 volt string of front terminal batteries with a split system inside of it. So if you are selecting 130 volt, the system is good with the full battery capacity. If we are looking at a 48 volt application, you can flip the switch and then you're at 48 volts. Like we had said, this is a dual input source, so they have shore power available as well as a Generac generator on the front as kind of a standalone source to the system. A lot of design went into this. They have custom supports throughout the enclosure to support the chargers, support the battery strings. We're using all seismically rated battery racks for the system. It includes a hydrogen sensor with an exhaust fan, which is also manually override, so we can vent the trailer itself without the hydrogen sensor. There's a 1-ton air conditioner mounted on top, as well as an internal heater. So this application is going out to the mountain ranges where it can be really hot or really cold. So we've taken accommodation for both of those types of environments. There's full interior lighting, convenience receptacles, and then we include everything you need to get it hooked up to the system. We have 100 feet of 1-gauge DC cables, positive, negative grounding location for the trailer itself, as well as a 100-foot shore power cord included with these systems. So as you see it right now is exactly how it ships to the end user. Fully integrated, full system, ready to go. Any sort of design considerations you would need inside of that trailer.
Is it me or was that video playing really fast?
Yeah, I think we were on fast forward.
Is it fast forwarding? Anyway, this is the brainchild of this gentleman right here, Kurt Euler. And if I could open up his mic, I'd love to have him answer any questions that you guys might have about the system. He's the design engineer for this. He understands it better than anybody in our organization. He's been in the industry for quite a few years, recognized by the IEEE as one of the thought leaders around these types of applications and these types of customers. So I invite you, if you have any thought that you could potentially sell one of these, you have a customer that might be interested in a presentation, a discussion, please let Cody or me know, and we'll arrange to have Kurt contact you to further that discussion and see what can be done. All right, it's really a bummer that this thing's going so fast, and also that we're not able to. Everybody got the link here, because all these are up on YouTube. This is the direct link, will take you right to the YouTube site for this specific presentation. But if you YouTube HM Cragg capabilities showcase, you'll see all of the videos. We tend to put up videos of some of the interesting projects. So the two that I have here, but there's probably another 10 or a dozen that you could pick from as far as projects that we've worked on and might be of interest to you. Okay, the last few things I want to talk about is, so we've continued to expand our capability. We now have some partners that can actually fabricate shelters and sheds for us. We've talked about some of the limitations of enclosures, true enclosures. A lot of it has to do with heat containment, hydrogen gassing. The biggest piece really is about airflow, though, or if it's a larger system, say larger than a 9355, a 93E, or a 93 PM, and certainly if it has an external battery cabinet. There's a couple of different ways that can be tackled. One would be to do multiple enclosures. You could do one with the UPS and a second one that would have nothing but the batteries, and then those two can be either joined in the field or could be created with custom cable assemblies to land the conductors for the positive and negative DC cabling, plus all the communications back and forth between the UPS and the battery cabinet. But another way to tackle it would be to use a full-blown shelter or a shed. And we've done a number of designs around this concept. We've worked with several partners. Actually, I believe the partners on the phone that we've had the most interest in order to make some of these things transportable. It's small enough that you could lift this with forklift and set it on the back of a truck, or put it into an aircraft and basically ship it around the world if needs be. We've made quite a few other modifications to the shed in order to make it more chemical resistant, heat resistant, not only the air conditioner, but some of the other things that we've incorporated into the design overall. Same thing though, we would start with concept drawings, working with you on exactly what it is that you need from size of the UPS, the battery runtimes, the type of battery system, any ancillary equipment that you'd like to see, and then we would design the shelter around it. So here's another example where we had everything in one cabinet, UPS, battery cabinet, automatic transfer switch. There was custom input and output distribution so that we could plug in pin and sleeve. We had redundant air conditioners built into this, Connex style doors. And actually, in this specific iteration, the customer required us to do a load test, to make sure the dynamic loading on the enclosure would not distort the door, so that you could operate the doors even if one of the corners was out of level. So super rigid construction, very heavy duty. It was a really, really interesting project that we were involved with. Here's, another concept drawing on the interior. And then, we will take it so far as to provide the renderings as well. So when we get that far into the project, if we absolutely need them, then Cody will actually spend the time to put together a rendering so we can actually have a very good visualization of how these specific structures are going to be organized. Everything from the cable pass-throughs and cable management across the top, the input and output, the automatic, it's all here. And it's all laid out in actual dimensions. You can take that another step forward, and we have a couple of partners that are also capable of building full-blown e-houses. So think mini data center. Think you can containerize basically. Everybody's familiar with the ISO containers, modular data center construction. Our partners don't do the ISO container. They actually stick build these. So they have a steel base, and then they mount plating that they actually will, that becomes the floor assembly, and then they mount all of the equipment and then build the walls around all of that equipment. And they're highly customizable. So again, it's completely dependent on what your customer is going to want to see or need for their specific application. It could be only power, so UPS and all of the ancillary equipment to support the UPS. It could be just the generator module if you just wanted to have outdoor rated generator module. And then the other thing would be data center module. So that would incorporate not only the power and power quality equipment, power distribution, but then we would have some number of enclosures that we would actually populate inside of that structure. You can isolate a piece of the structure and have like a command center if you wanted to. So power distribution, IT space, and then like command or office space at the very end or in the middle, or again, highly customizable. So we've done a few design concepts. We already have literature around some of these systems, 200 kilowatt on a 93 PM, 400 kilowatt, and both 93 PM and 9395, but we go all the way up to a 1200 kilowatt or redundant parallel 600 kilowatts. So we have the designs done, we have the drawings done, we have all of the collateral that you would need. If this is something you'd like to be able to take out and offer to your client, then we're ready to be able to show you what we got. All right, the last couple of slides. Field services, working with one of our partners against a competitor, believe it or not. We came up with a concept, we call it Power Plus, but what it is basically for a large distributed network where a customer wants to do 100 single phase UPSs, they want to rip out what they got, they want to install all new stuff, they want to have EBMs, network cards, ePDUs, whatever, all that additional ancillary equipment. They don't have the resources to do this. As part of the overall offering, then we can actually go out and do site surveys. We can figure out what the scope of work would be to do all of that installation, make sure that we got the right size receptacles that match up to the size or specification of the UPS, make sure we got sufficient use space available in the enclosure. But we basically take that project down from project management, the walkthrough, to delivering the services. We're not going to go out there and do that for 5 UPSs. But if you have a whole hospital or a whole university, and we've done this already with both hospitals and universities, where they need multiple devices and they have absolutely no idea how they're going to get that work done, we would like to be your partner, either by delivering those services ourselves. We have integration technicians that are trained in doing that work, especially here in the local market. But we can fly that technician for the right opportunity, fly that technician to site to do this work. Cody and I are more than happy to travel to come out and do that initial scope walk or site survey, the walkthrough to develop the scope of work. So hopefully that's explanation enough, but we would love to be able to work with you guys on those types of opportunities. Edge infrastructure, this is the last category, so it's converged infrastructure around enclosures, UPS, power distribution, all of that stuff in a single package. For network closets or IDFs, where you start with something like these two images on the left here, it's a broom closet. It's not well temperature regulated. It might be a little bit dusty, but their entire network operations depend on this. This was actually a site out in New York. And what we did was we went in with a type 12 enclosure, air conditioning, ventilation, all the power distribution, cable management on the inside of that enclosure. And when we walked away, they were in a much better place. So we have reference designs on those solutions as well, all around the power density within the enclosure. It could be a 2.6 up to 5.8 kilowatts, and that's size limited based on the air conditioner that's attached. We have some larger systems for single and double cabinet where we do an in-row style open loop air conditioner. The thing about this is it's either going to be chilled water or it's going to be DX. So you're going to have, this additional piece of equipment that we can furnish, but is not really part of this package. So this is another level of capability. Closed loop. All I would point out between this slide is that the top of this enclosure, this is actually the top looking down, has cable input and output. You can actually come through the top for cable management, whereas this one does not. I'm sorry, the door. It's the door. This has a vented front door. This one has a solid front door. It could be glass or it could be metal. So how do we enhance your capabilities? We want to be your partners for these types of projects. You own your customer relationships, but we want to be able to support you. And so that's about your level of trust. How involved do you want Cody and me? How involved, I guess, how much work would you like us to take on to kind of free you to go and find another opportunity? We have some partners that basically say, here's the customer's contact. Please reach out and let me know what the bill of material is going to be. And we have others that say, I want to be in every meeting, every telephone call, and both scenarios are perfectly fine with us. That opportunity belongs to you. We want to work with you in conjunction. We participate in any teleconferences you might want to have, specific face-to-face meetings once we got out of the Corona thing. You want to do whatever, performing the site walkthrough. Again, we will take on all of that responsibility for you and then develop the scope of work, the system description, give you a comprehensive bill of material, your cost, your price, and then whatever additional information, collateral that you might need in order to close the job. Cody's put together a quote request form. We'd like you guys to start using this because the more information that you give us up front, the better we are at managing these opportunities. So you get there, we'll send everybody that attended this link, or you can get it directly from the sales managers. But you go here and it will automatically give you this survey. You can engage with your sales manager or your technical sales coordinator, and then they'll get Cody and me involved. Or you can complete the quote. In the end, you're going to come back to this quote. And then the other thing is we're going to ask you to participate in a conversation. Let's have a conversation about your opportunity. Fill out the form. We'll review it, develop our own set of questions that we need to have answered. And then we're going to come back and ask you for additional information, which may be, can you set up a conference call with your customer? Can we come out and visit? Can we do a webinar? Whatever. So we're going to be there in order to support it. So there's a bunch of questions here. I think I have it duplicated. Your name, your email, your phone number, blah, blah, blah. Give it a project name, the application type. Who's your end user if you want to give us that information? Are they available for a consult? Here's our thing, is the closer we can get to your customer, the better off we are understanding what the requirements are, and then we can start driving value. We can demonstrate where and what we're doing in order to drive the price that we're gonna ask for in order to do all this work. System description as best as you can come up. You may not have any idea, and that's okay. But I need you to put something in here. The available voltage. This is a big deal because a lot of customers don't realize that you put a 2U9PX into an enclosure. That's a line corded device. And they may not have a receptacle available. So we need to know anything we can about the available voltage, what's the output voltage requirement. From our discussion around the types of enclosures, maybe you can take a stab at which one they're going to need. But what's really going to drive the type requirement is, where is this going to be installed? What's the environment? Click all that apply. Also, the ambient temperature. That's going to tell us whether or not we need to bring in additional cooling above and beyond just the heat dissipated by the UPS. So you're going to run through this. You hit the submit button. We automatically get notification that the opportunity is there. And I'm not going to speak for Cody, but I bet within 2 hours he's on the phone trying to get a hold of you. Marketing resources, make this capability your own, okay? We have taken a lot of time, and we continue to work on all of the collateral material that we have available for you, all of the videos that we're putting up on YouTube. We have a brochure already for the integrated power offering. We also have a brochure around industrial enclosures. You can make it your own. Get up with Dan Jackson. He'll put your logo on top of these brochures. He'll print these things for you. He'll send them to you electronically so that you can actually start using that with your logo, create it, make it yours. It's your offering. We're in the background. You guys run the ball. You can download these brochures on our website as well. The videos, I mentioned those, are up and on YouTube. Okay, so what is integration? We talked about inventory and logistics management, asset tagging, kitting and assembly, product modifications. Whew, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot. It's not limited to those bullet points. Please keep that in mind. You have an opportunity. It doesn't sound like it's cookie cutter. It doesn't sound like something you've done before. Let's get on the phone and let's talk about it. Let's figure out how we might be able to address that and drive that opportunity together. I think I'm done. So what did I say? If I didn't remember to say it, thank you very much for your time. I ran an hour and 36. You guys, there was 36 people on the phone, and 30 of you have made it through to the very end. So thank you so much for your attention. Hopefully you saw some things there that make sense and it might be valuable as you're out in your markets and you're talking to customers. Hopefully there's something there that you might be able to use. Everybody stay well. Again, really strange times. Cody and I are chomping at the bit to get back out and start visiting with you all. What else did I want to say? I don't think we had anybody paused or. Cody, what else did I want to say before we hung up? Thank you for your continued patronage, your partnership. Stay well. Thanks for attending. Awesome. I'll open it up for questions now. Let me see if this works. All right, everybody should be unmuted unless you are muted yourself. Are there any questions left?
George, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, George, it's Carl Long. How are you?
Hey, Carl.
Hey, listen, obviously the breadth and scope of what you guys is pretty intense. How would you recommend that we get this information in front of our customers? I think if we get this all to them at one time, it's going to be overwhelming. What have you guys found in terms of what's been successful for you opening door in terms of your integrated services?
Yeah. So we have the brochures, and it's really, you guys especially have been very, very active, and we appreciate everything that you've been doing with us. It's just, I guess, introducing the concept and trying, I guess, at the highest level to try to get some understanding with the customer of what some of these capabilities are. If you have a specific opportunity, trying to frame that opportunity in terms of being able to add more content or additional services. It's really, I think it's going to boil down to you first, understanding this message, and then kind of internalizing that and understanding that there really is no limitation on what we're trying to accomplish here. There are a few things that we think we do really, really well, and those are the things that I kind of defined in the discussion. But it's more about kind of what your understanding of that capability or what we want to try to do, and then identifying those needs at your customer. So that being said, we have those tools that we can send out or you can download them directly from the website around the brochures. I have this presentation. I'm more than happy. I don't think there was any proprietary content here. I'm happy to send this presentation to everybody. The problem is it's probably about 100 megabytes because I've got a lot of, as you guys saw, a lot of images. But we can try to figure out a way. Maybe we can put it up on an FTP site. You guys can download it and use it in front of your customers. I want to come and visit with you guys again. I mean, I love coming out with you and visiting with customers and talking about this thing. I get pretty animated. If you guys had seen me, I've been kind of on my feet the entire presentation and my arms are waving. And anyway, so I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it starts with you, Carl, understanding yeah, there's a few things that we can define as far as what we've done in the past, but it's more about what can we do in the future and helping us figure out what you need and what the customer's going to need.
So George, in terms of vendors, I know that you guys have obviously your line card manufacturers you have agreements with, but I guess you're open to using other manufacturers if you guys don't do the purchase. You know, for instance, on the AC side, right, we have a large client that prefers a different AC manufacturer than what you guys offer.
Yep, exactly.
So as long as we supply those components, you guys can still do the integration without an issue? That's
correct. Yeah, I can't sell you a GE UPS or an APC UPS. I don't want to sell you a GE UPS. But if I can't get into your customer using Eaton, or you know, Falcon, or here's the thing, Carl, is our agreement with Eaton is we are exclusive for those things that Eaton has an offer. As soon as Eaton doesn't have an offer and they really don't have a good industrial UPS, they don't have an outdoor rated UPS. So we were left scrambling to figure out who do we work with in order to address that part of the market. If you have something in mind, it may be something that we can source. We probably don't have existing relationships for that stuff, like Control Power System, right? They're up in Michigan. You know, we'd love to sell some of the stuff that they have for UL 924 because Eaton doesn't have that. We can't source it, but if you can, absolutely grab it, send it to us. We'll figure out how to package it.
Understood. Okay, terrific. Very informational. Thanks, George. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Carl. I hope everybody's good out there. Stay well.
Yeah, everybody's fine so far. Thanks for asking. I hope the same as we.
Excellent. Anyone else? Questions? 28 stayed through to the very end. You guys are troopers. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Everybody have a great day and stay well.